Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. My name is Death by Pony, or welcome to the channel if you're new here. Today we're hopping into the final part of the first part of the thing before it goes into the epilogue. So without further ado, let's hop into this. You caught up to Cove and together you went over to his house. Walking in the front door, you saw Kira and Mr. Holden busily unpacking already. Things were scattered on counters and they were moving around each other, putting the items away. They both lifted their heads when Cove closed the front door. Hey, it's nice seeing you again already, Ari. Her teasing tone brought a light smile to your face. You hefted the stuff in your arms a little closer. I ended up with things of yours from the beach. Oh, thanks for getting that to us. You can put it here on the coffee table. Mr. Holden pointed at the surface he was referring to, and you immediately left what didn't belong to your family there. Cove put his own things down on the floor, just at his feet, wading through everything strewn about to reach his parents. Putting your family's stuff on the ground for a moment, you dusted your hands and straightened up. You needed a second of rest and a minute to resituate it all. You went over to where the others were too. Kira opened her arms wide, wanting to hug you. You accepted it. Without any hesitation, you went to Kira and let her pull you into a hug. You squeezed her back just as tight. Her hug was filled with affection, and you hoped that she could feel how much you cared about her too. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. It was a blast. You're welcome. Today was amazing. Kira eventually released you, but patted the tops of your shoulders as a final gesture.
Thank you.
Every time I've gotten to come by, it's been absolute joy. Things really couldn't have worked out better. Mr. Holden took a step closer to you. Kara moved aside and let him say goodbye too. He grinned. Thanks for always being such a friendly neighbor, and not just right now, but for as long as I've known you. I didn't always make it easy, but you and your family are good people. I really, truly appreciate
Thanks
it.
very much.
Thanks again, Ari, so much. And that Mr. Holden reached over and gave you a soft pat on the top of your head. I'm really glad you are my neighbor. You're good people too. You hugged them. Goodbye, Mr. Holden. Hug. You burst forward into Mr. Holden and wrapped your arms around him. Surprised, he went rigid immediately. But several moments later, he relaxed and began lightly pat your back before shifting into a full hug. You squeezed him tighter. Thanks for moving in. As you let go, he sniffled, and when he met your gaze once more, his mouth pulled into a wide, happy grin. Mr. Holden was staring at you, but his gaze seemed far away. Maybe he was looking back at who you used to be, the 8-year-old who had asked to be his son's new friend.
See you.
Bye, Ari. You smiled softly. Then Cove took a step forward, gestured to a pile of things he had carried into the house.
Don't worry about it.
Don't worry about all that. I'll put that stuff away in a few minutes. Right, I need to go do the same with my family. I figured. Cove walked you to the door and held it open, taking one last check around to make sure you had all your things to bring home. You went to the road. He leaned his body against the door frame, not following you out. So this is it, huh? Actually, that's not what I meant. His expression twisted, and he shook his head a bit, like he was trying to banish the pensive thoughts. I'll just say bye. Yeah, bye. It won't be long before you'll see me again. You offered him a small wave goodbye with your other hand. As you walked over to your own front door, you stopped. Turning around, you spotted Cove right where you had left him. You laughed quietly to yourself. For a small pause, you both stared at each other from across the street. Good night. Night. You shouted across the way to one another. He moved one of his arms in a big wave so you couldn't miss it. After one more shared nod, you opened the door and went inside, shutting it behind you. After a few steps in, you saw your family gathered in the living room. They were still busy unpacking and cleaning. You added the things you brought to the pile on the kitchen counter. Mom stood up, rubbing her eyes a bit. She yawned loudly. I'm bushed. How about we finish the rest of the chores tomorrow? Yeah, honestly, it's too late for this.
Thanks.
Please and thank you. Ma put her hands on her hips and turned to assess the room. Ma was not one who liked to leave a mess about, but she sighed.
All right.
I suppose we can make an exception to the usual rule. It has been a really long day. Liz grinned contentedly. Lee wasted no time skipping over to you and hooked you into a side hug. Good night. I hope you have the loveliest of dreams. I hope you have good dreams too. You hugged her back. Hugs. You pulled her in close into a bear hug, and Lee giggled until you released her. I hope you sleep well too. Oh, I totally will. The moment my head hits the pillow, I'll be out. Here's to us, Ari. Tonight, tomorrow, and forever. You smirked at that. Yeah, family forever. Thanks, Lee. You're really lucky. You nodded quietly. Yeah, family forever. Lee leaned in close to whisper in her ear. You didn't fail to catch the teasing look on her face.
Aw.
Exactly. There's no escape. That got a laugh out of you. You lightly pushed her shoulder. Lee stretched her arms high over her head. She yawned loudly and looked at you with tired eyes. I think that's my cue to head to bed. Bye. I think so too. Have fun sharing your room with Liz. She laughed at that and Lee shuffled off towards the guest room. Before you had a chance to do anything else, you can feel the top of your head being patted. You spun around to see Liz smirking. Nighty night, I'm heading to bed too. It's been a long day and I have a lot to prepare for tomorrow. Exhaling, you automatically started fixing the back of your hair. When Liz didn't immediately walk away, you smiled softly at her. Everything okay? Her gaze moved away and you knew she had more to say. You waited patiently for Liz to compose her thoughts. It's been a good summer. It was nice to come back home. You nodded and Liz gave you a teasing nudge as she went by. Amused, you turned and watched her go. Love you, little kiddo. Good night, Liz. I love you too. Bye, older sister. You gave her a hug goodnight. Hug. You wrapped your arms around her, back to hug her from behind. She laughed and patted your hands. Eventually, you let go from your grasp. When Liz was out of sight, Mom started up the next conversation over her shoulder. Aren't you heading up to bed too? I want to relax first. I want to finish getting everything cleaned up. What? Are you sure? It can wait. Glancing around the room a moment, the disarray made you feel a bit twitchy. You had a feeling that you'd sleep a lot sounder if you took time cleaning before bed. Yeah. Ma came over too, smiling understandingly. She pulled you into a big hug.
Love you.
All right, you do what you need to. I love you. When you were done hugging Mom pulled you into another hug, their actions basically handing you off together as you laughed
I love you.
jovially. I love you so much. Good night. I love you too. You're the best parents. You didn't say anything. I love you too. Aw. They both couldn't resist taking turns hugging you again. Your smile widened. It felt good to be so loved. Good night, kiddo. Sleep tight. Good night, sweetie. Night. After that, your moms headed off towards their bedroom down the hall. You were about to turn the other direction when you heard Mom's voice. And don't let the bed bugs bite. You heard Ma chuckling as you watched them go with a smile. It was a while later when you were finished putting everything away. You didn't rush the process at all. Your sleeping hours may have been cut into, but you felt so much better getting this done. You sighed contentedly, gazing at the organized living room and kitchen. Before you could take a well-earned break on the couch, something out the window caught your eye. Your feet brought you right in front of the large window spanning the length of the back wall. You stared out onto the hill behind your house. Something inside told you that it was the right kind of night to take a trip out there. You went over to the front door and stepping over the threshold, you gave the living room one last glance over your shoulder. Then you shut the door behind. Silently, you made your way to the poppy hill. With a light step in the dark, you watched across the hill behind your house. Up ahead, at the very top, silhouette beneath the night sky, was a familiar figure already waiting there. It didn't surprise you in the slightest that Cove also chosen to visit this spot tonight. Smiling, you wondered just how he always got there first. You even had the advantage of living closer. Then again, and maybe it was only in your mind, but somehow Cove was intrinsically linked with this place. After all these years, it would be weird to scan the horizon and not find him there, as surreal as the shore without the sea. The distance between you was growing shorter by the second. Hearing the grass and earth crunch under your feet, Cove turned, and a grin spread over his face as he saw you. He wasn't shocked at your appearance either. You took your place sliding behind him on the crest of the poppy hill, looking over the ocean. Same as you'd done countless times since he'd first arrived, you'd found him on this very same spot. Airy. He had officially broken the silence, the spell that had held you both in place. You looked at him expectantly. There's something I've always kind of wondered about. He cocked his head, giving you a sidelong glance. What did you think about when we met? Well, I was just a kid you'd never seen before, bawling his eyes out on the hill next to your house. He chuckled, his eyes drifting towards the sea beyond before flicking back to you. The way his gaze pulled back to you made it clear he was genuinely invested in the topic. Luckily for him, you remembered what initially struck you at the moment. It was as if it had only happened yesterday. Well, I remember noticing the huge glasses you had then. Cove burst into genuine laughter at your reply.
Hmm.
I guess that's fair. I did kind of stand out. Smiling, you continued to reminisce about that first meeting. I also remember trying to cheer you up. I remember that too. He ran a hand through his hair, and you knew this line of questioning wasn't at an end even before he spoke
I
again.
mean,
Do you remember what you thought about me, as a person? Was I annoying or mean? I didn't think you were very nice. You kind of scared me, to be honest. You were alright. I got to admit it, I didn't think much of you. I don't know what to make of you at first. I don't really remember anymore. I didn't know what to make of you at first. Cove nodded, accepting your answer without hesitation. Cove's hand drifted to the scar on his arm, his finger unconsciously gliding over the mark. It was much less noticeable than it had been when the neon pink cast had first come off, shrunken gradually over the years, as his body healed, then dwarfed in comparison to his growing body. Still, his fingers came back to it without thinking. He gave a half smile, not meeting your eyes. No matter what you were thinking, I doubt it was worse than what I had going on in my mind. You raised your eyebrows vaguely at his vague words, wondering what it was that he meant. Cove lifted his head up, finally committing to meeting your eyes fully once more. I remember you that day. I remember it really well. I don't think I'd ever be able to forget. I can picture the way you looked back when I first saw you standing right there. I still know the expression on your face when you chose to sit with me in the grass. He chuckled self derisively, interrupting his own monologue. You scared me at first. I figured I'd be all alone out here until I had to face my dad again, and then suddenly another kid appeared out of nowhere. It was startling, but I got over that fast. You were a strange person in a strange place, but in that moment you were exactly what I needed, somebody I could talk to freely about what was happening and how it made me feel. And you listened to me. You stayed with me. He sighed and then bit his lip and gave a small smile. Was a little I was a little bit spoiled growing up. Let him continue. Yeah, you were. It wasn't bad. You were dealing with a lot. We're gonna let him continue. He looked off again, seeking clarity in his thoughts in the expanse of the night sky. What I'm trying to say is, when I was younger, I viewed myself basically the center of the universe and didn't even imagine what it.
I
I
mean,
wasn't like that. Things didn't simply happen. That would be weird, according to my little kid brain. It made far more sense that everything in my life has a specific connection to me somehow, right? He sought affirmation in you. Wavy brows raised as he tried to explain his childlike logic. So at the time, you felt almost unreal. Like you weren't just anyone, some other kid who had happened to live in the neighborhood with your own whole life that wasn't connected to Cove Holden. No, to me, you were there so that you could find me when I was lost. I kind of expected it all to vanish like a dream when that night was over. I would wake up and everything would be the same again.
that's.
I'd be back in my bed at home, my real home with both my parents. The future was something I couldn't picture anymore. I didn't know what school would be like when I went back, or the table where I'd eat breakfast the next morning, or anything. And if I couldn't imagine it, how could I think it was something actually happening? I couldn't grasp my new reality, and it was too big for me to hold all at once. So I never thought I'd see you again. I get that. I don't know what's going through I don't know what going through that is like. I never saw what was coming either. You didn't make it very clear that you'd be a big part of my life from then on, whether I liked it or not. Maybe you could have spun on your heels and left me right there and then if I had. Cove sighed contentedly. His voice was as delicate as the petals on the poppies which were crowded on this hill. He tilted his head up, though lost in the sparse clouds above. I wonder how late it is. I guess it doesn't really matter. My dad's fine with me being out whenever. You could just use your phone to check the time. You could still text your dad about what you're doing. You could still text your dad about what you're doing. I'm going to message my moms. My moms might care, but I don't feel like telling them. You wanted to make sure you messaged your moms. He quietly nodded. Mr. Holden was content giving Cove all the freedom he could. Are you going to lay in the grass now? Oh, wow, how'd you know? You're predictable. With a chuckle, Cove plopped down onto the ground and laid on his back, usual way of spending the time there. We're gonna lay with him. You took your own spot next to him in the grass, brushing the blades of grass aside a bit with your hand. The both of you fully settled in to relax on the hill. It felt just like the beginning of your night outing. But then you realized the sun was peeking out of the horizon. Cove spoke up with a disbelieving tone.
Huh.
It really was late. Your neighbor wasn't a stranger to being awake at dawn. However, not like this. He was normally an early sleeper, early riser. This unexpected sunrise particularly awed him. The two of you watched on silently as the sun began to lighten the world. He eyed the hill sprawling out before you and down below, where Wild Hill naturally gave way to civilization. Time to go home. It was a nice night, but we can't stay forever. Yeah. Okay, take care of yourself. Goodbye, Cove. He simply smiled. Take care of yourself. With a small nod, Cove got to his feet and began his ascent down the poppy hill. You watched him go. The world began to fade and blur. You were absolutely ready to get into bed. And before you realized it, that's where you were, comfortable and content, wrapped in your soft blanket after a sleepy stroll. Your eyelids dipped, but you felt good. You were relaxed. Everything that had come before this had reassured you to that. You were confident that when you opened them again, things would be okay. Ugh. Just as suddenly as sleep came, it was over. A constant bustling of your phone had stirred you. Through bleary eyes, you checked what the news was. There was a lot of it. Morning was gone. It was squarely afternoon. With that came plenty of interest in your upcoming plans. Mom, Liz, and Lee wanted to go to town at some point. Baxter wanted to know if you'd be up for brunch, his treat. Derek was hoping to call again, since catching up was cut kind of short last time. Plus, Terry and Miranda had both gone crazy in group chat sharing queries. Text plans imagining you amusement. There was always something going on, it seemed. But family and friends were waiting. More memories could be made, so you pulled yourself out of bed to meet them. Life takes another step forward. Ooh. Hope you all enjoyed today's episode. If you did, hit like. That way I know you're enjoying the content I'm making. Remember to hit subscribe. That way you can come back here and see what happens next. Especially because Baxter DLC. He's hot. You want to see it. I know you do. Anyway, I hope you have a good day, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye-bye.